Bring you guys in a little closer here. Hello, my name is Dan, and this is Dan's Art Adventure number 10. Sarah and Joe tweaking or perfecting their portrait, whichever you want to call it. And I'm only going to do this for a few minutes because it would be dreadfully boring to watch me do this for a long time. But you can watch me for a little while. I explained or I described this process. Hello, Uncle. Hello, Jim. I explained this technology a little while ago. Here on the photograph, which is the same exact size as the painting, not the vice versa. I make the print equal the painting, not the painting. Anyway, not the painting equal the print. Anyway, and I have here a faster tool, but here's a slower tool, and I just pointed to show it to you because I mentioned this the other day. So I'm using a real compass. This is an ink pen point, but it comes to a very, very sharp point. That's important. And the only benefit of this one over this one is that this one, of course, you measure and then it can accidentally bump, right? This one can't do that. So I'm going to do some of the measurements and let you guys watch me. Again, as I said, this would be dreadfully boring if I continue. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
If I did this for a long time. I'm working on her face, and okay, so this measurement is not so fussy. I'm going to call it the peak of her glasses. Just a scant 1/8 of an inch below. Okay, so while I'm doing this, let me explain a couple other things. That you don't have to measure everything. Of course, I mean, you can knock yourself out, go for it. But you don't have to measure everything. For instance, I can see that this point on the glasses where the nose piece meets the round glass, I can see that that's about a scant 1/4 inch from the horizontal line. So I don't need to measure that. I can eyeball that. At least I think I can. I can replicate it in my mind. So that goes right there. Okay, that dot right there, I don't know if you can see it, that represents where the middle of her glasses, I don't know what they call the nose piece, hits the round, okay? Now, I'm going to measure from that side to that side. Of course, I can just draw this. I don't necessarily need, like I said, I don't need to measure. Now, when I do this, by the way, it's important that I keep the compass. I can't let it tilt, right? So I got to keep it at the same angle, precisely that angle. By the way, I do find, for what it's worth, I do find the compass tool to be particularly advantageous when doing really small measurements like that, about a 1/4 of an inch or so. I continue measuring out her glasses, and once again, I'm sure you understand, I could be just drawing much of this, right? Sort of like this in a way. Well, this is it's tedious, of course, doing it this way. Tedious, but accurate. So there you go. Which do you want? One of the people that I have watched doing this, I mentioned his name often, is Mark Carder with a D, and he begins, at least it looks to me like he begins his portraits this way, with a couple, maybe more than one crosshairs, I don't remember, but measuring very much like this. And by the time he's done, his canvas is just a mass of little hash marks, because he's got all these vortexes, he's got all these points measured out, and then he proceeds to draw. By the way, Mark Carder is one of those guys who says, he says, anybody can learn to paint. In fact, his website is called Paint Mix Draw? No, Mix Draw Paint? I forget which one of those order those words go in. Yes, Uncle and Jim, your answer is correct. I don't know if I finished answering the question. This monitor, which is quite important, because at least that tells me when I lose sound, has a button on it like all these do. And somebody might say, well, why don't you get a different one? So glad you asked. This is my 8th model. Eight. I've gone through 8 models. Each one has a different difficulty attached to it. So I'm still on the quest for the perfect in-ear monitor. And yeah, through some magic of Bluetooth bleeding technology. In other words, this is not the way it's supposed to work, I promise. If I touch this button, it turns off my sound. And you'd say, oh, well then touch it again and turn it back on. Oh, that life was so easy. Anyway, long story. Yeah, sorry about that. I am still working on it. In fact, I have another set of headphones to try, earbuds, and I could do the great big, great big earmuff things. I think they look ridiculous, so I'm probably not going to do that. Anyway, sorry about that. I am working on it still. Okay, the width of her nose. Let's talk just a little bit more about, again, what I used to call this cheating, and I would hasten to say all cheating is legal. It was one of my regular viewers about maybe 2.5 years ago, finally can talk to me out of using the word cheating. Many people had said it before him, but he sent a very sweet and impassioned email explaining that he was an older gentleman who very much loved his newfound art of painting. But if he didn't, quote unquote, cheat, he would never paint anything. He just needed his drawing skills. And the fact that I called it cheating just put a damper on his pleasure. Say pleasure in life. And you know what? I thought, well, golly, that's a good point. That's a good point. So for the most part, I've stopped calling it cheating, but I used to call it. Okay, now I call it photomechanical techniques, which of course is a good, accurate description. But here's what I want to say today is all the photomechanical tips, tricks in the world still, and this is not to be discouraging. In fact, this is to be encouraging in a way, because some of your non-artist friends, they might say, "Oh, you mean you cheated?" Okay, so here's what you do. If any of them ever say that, you give them all the tools, tracing, projecting, gridding, measuring, and say, "Okay, you do it." Two things. Number one, this kind of thing is so tedious. They all are. Gridding, projecting, tracing, no matter what you do, it's kind of like tedious. Then not only that, when you're all done doing all the tedious stuff, you still have to fall back on your eyes being able to see. Because you can't, for instance, like, look at his forehead here, just as an example. Do you see there's like a light spot in the middle, kind of shaped like a almond? And then there's dark part. I'm not going to try to measure out where those slight gradations take place. That would be ridiculous. There'd be 1,000 marks on his face. No, you don't do that. But you still have to capture that. So, my point being, this is, I hope, encouraging for those of you who feel guilty that you're having to cheat or use photomechanical tips and tricks. Even after all the best photomechanical tips and tricks in the world, after using all of them, you still have to exercise the skill, the art of seeing. So anybody who is doing a reasonably good portrait, and I'm just saying reasonably good, is exercising more skill than most people have any idea. I'm not sure how I'm trying to say that, but you got the idea. Anyway, so the point is, even after all this technical stuff, there's still plenty of room to screw up. Yes, but no, plenty of need for exercising skill, and you guys all know that. I mean, I learned it so well decades ago as an illustrator. By the way, illustrators are the king, if you will, the kings and queens, if you will, of photomechanical tips and tricks. Illustrators utilize these techniques like crazy. And I discovered years ago that after having projected and traced, I could still screw up really easily. It wasn't hard. I could still mess up. Anyway, so kudos to any of you who are doing. Again, and did you see what I just did there? She has a round cheek. Most people do have round cheeks, so it's hard to designate an exact measuring point. So and this is laminated in plastic, of course. So I just made a dot, fairly arbitrarily, although in this case it's where her neck meets her cheek. But that gives me a very exact spot to measure to. Let's make sure it's that far over, and it's this far down. Now, of course, there is room in the world. Now, I'm going to erase part of the pencil mark that I just made because I'm afraid it's going to cause me confusion later on. There's room in the world for people who do fast and loose and wild and crazy portraits that aren't, photographically accurate, if I can use that term. There's room for that kind. I mean, Van Gogh, I love Van Gogh, I really do. I didn't get him when I was a young man. I was like, I don't know, I like Rembrandt better, and I guess I still do like Rembrandt better, but I love Van Gogh, just amazing. And I'll resist the temptation to explain why he's amazing. Probably don't need to. But he never did anything like this, right? So you can be an amazing artist and not do this kind of picayune, drive yourself crazy kind of stuff, right? You can indeed. It's not hard at all. Now, by the way, besides, and I don't know if Mark Carter does this or not. I don't remember seeing him do it, but I do go ahead, since I'm working with a pencil, I will go ahead and do a little bit of shading while I'm here. I mean, why not? The pencil's in my hand, the pencil's on the canvas, and like I just did her eyebrow right there, and I'll do the same thing over here, eyebrow over here. Okay, now here's a Here's a real subtle edit. I'm going to move the front line of her neck that way. Oh, about a 1/16 of an inch. Nobody will know except her dad, who's watching right now. And Jim, you're sworn to silence. Okay, the reason being, a woman looks better with a thinner neck. I mean, forgive me, I know I'm, once again, when you're photographers and painters have a slightly different ideal. Okay, I've got a problem here. That eye doesn't look like it's in the right place. So of course I will tweak figures. I have already elongated in the photograph, which you can't see the whole thing here, but I've already elongated their figures. Oh, I don't know, 10% or something like that. Just enough. So here's, I know I've talked about this before. Just enough so that when the client sees it, the client's plural, when they see their portrait, they'll go, "Oh, we look good," right? So I want to idealize, if you will. I want to idealize. This is John Singer Sargent classic, straight up. I think every good portrait painter does this. Idealize their figure, their client a little bit, but not to the point that the client goes, "Wait a minute, did you make me skinny?" Right? If their response is that, then I've done it too much. Make sense? So, as I said just a minute ago, I just moved the front line, and never mind, I don't want to get into it. She's lovely, she's beautiful, and that's all I have to say about that. But I am going to, so to speak, idealize her just slightly. Jim, you can't tell anybody I said that. Jim already knows. He's watched me do enough of this to kind of know what's going on. Same thing with her upper arm. I don't want to get into it, but the whole kind of the politically correct subject of body shaming for women, and by the way, there are people. I do think that what happens on like CoverGirl magazine covers is just ridiculous. And there are websites that document that kind of thing. The absurd lengths to which the advertising industry will go. And I do think that's crazy. But I don't think that a painter artist, it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same. All right, and if you disagree, that's all right. That's all I want to talk about. That's as much as I want to talk about that. Okay, I'm back to my regular tool for these large measurements. A little bit faster, a little bit more efficient. Okay, so I don't know how well you can see this, but what I've just done with her face is, I've done a bunch of measurements, all the stuff you just saw me do. I could do more fussy measurements, more picayune. Do you know that word? I'm not sure where that comes from, but more fussy, more detailed. Indeed, I could. But at some point, the law of diminishing returns kicks in, and just get like, no, it's not worth it. It's just not worth doing anymore. So I'm probably going to stop more or less at that point. But my little pencil sketch right here, something's wrong with her mouth. Welcome to the club. Something's not quite right. And So now I have to not only measure, I can double check and stuff like that. It's at this point, when I go back to painting, that I have to exercise my artistic skill of drawing, copying, looking, right? Again, the point I'm making is all the cheating, forgive me, all the cheating in the world doesn't alleviate the need for drawing skill. Got it? I probably beat that horse to death. Enough for one broadcast. Plus, let me do just a little bit on Joe here, on a little bit of measuring on his face. So the near corner of his beard is right there, just a hash mark. And I measured the location of his eyes the other day, but let me do it again just to double check. So I'm going right just to his pupil, right there. I'm going to move my earlier mark about a 1/60th of an inch. Let's check the height. Okay. Okay. So I did move his eye just a little bit. Now, instead of measuring this eye, I'm just going to measure from one pupil to the next, since that's such a specific measurement. Once again, so it's important that I keep the angle of the compass exactly the same as I move from here to here. I'm assuming you can see those two black dots, or if you're looking at a large enough screen, they look terrible. Just creepy, freaky, but be patient. Don't think of them as eyeballs, just think of them as, okay, no, I think I can eyeball this one. So I already use eyeball, two different sentences so close together, two different meanings. That's about, I don't know, 5/16 of an inch over from the, okay, so there's the bottom peak of his hair. Let's do the upper peak of it, and his temples right about there. And bear with me just a minute. I'm only going to do this. You can see why I don't want to do this kind of broadcast for a long time. This is just pretty much what Psalm and X in broadcasting, isn't it? Just only the diehard, which is some of you guys, want to see this much of this kind of stuff. So bear with me just for another minute, and I will going to move to something else. Okay, top of his head. There. I'm going to take the risk of drawing the rest of his head without measuring. That's pretty risky. Let's see. Okay, I have a dot already for the edge of his nostril. I'll put it right there. Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to take the risk of drawing his nose. Let's get the width correct. Et cetera. All right. That's enough of that. Let me get this out of the way. And before I finish today, let's just do a little bit of regular painting. what I'm gonna call regular painting anyway. Move you guys to a slightly different view. So the last thing I did was last Thursday, and what I was doing at the time was what I call the fuzz layer. A lot of messy blue flesh. It was mostly that blue and then light on her dress. So because I did the fuzz layer last, that actually opens the door to an additional drawing, dark detail. So I don't always do everything, all of my, let me start that over. Most of you know, or you regulars know, I have a normal process, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, right? But it's not rigid. And where this painting sits right at the moment, I feel like, hang on, I am going to do a little bit more measuring. Big measurement. Oh, I tell you what, let's take this off so I can just hold it. There we go. I want to get from my vertical line to the furthermost back of his shoulder blade. Right? Is that right there. So it's this far out and how far down. This is pretty important. Now, I probably will elongate this slightly. This is, okay, it's right there, good enough. That is to say, I'm going to make him slightly, as I said, slightly longer than realistic, just tiny. And all right, so and I've mixed two colors on my brushes here. This is not for you to take notes. This is just for curiosity's sake. I've mixed ultramarine and permanent rose. And I just want to do a little bit of definition, dark definition here. The last time I drew, I was drawing in pencil. Wait, no, I'm sorry, the last time I drew, I did pencil, then paint, very much like what I'm doing right now. But then I did the fuzz layer, which obliterated much of my painting with drawing, which is fine, I'm not complaining. But just the way this particular painting, the way it sits right now, makes me want a little more dark definition. So that's what I'm doing. Make sense? And that's why every painting, that's why I don't do the exact same formula on every painting, because the paintings evolve on their own trajectory, and they don't always need the same thing. And just when I came back to this canvas this morning, I said, "Oh, you know what? I want a little bit more dark definition before I proceed to what I call final edit." Now, the reason I call it final, it used to be the final step for many years. It was where it literally was a final, but I still call it final edit because it essentially serves that function. In the final edit layer, I'm using opaque, that is to say lots of white in the paint, right? Either white or yellow ochre, right? Something very opaque like that. And that's why when you're using opaque paint, you have the means to cover up, eliminate, obliterate stuff that's underneath it. And that is, in a sense, that is traditional oil painting technique. That's often when I teach my style of painting, when we get to the final edit layer, I sort of assume that my students understand traditional oil painting. Of course, I know that's also a dangerous assumption. Many times they don't. So then I have to remember, oh yeah, wait, I should show them that part too. But the reason, my thinking is, well, at that point, I'm just doing ordinary painting. My final edit layer is sort of ordinary oil painting, traditional opaque oil painting. All right, but then it's the editing function that is so helpful. I get to cover up any marks I don't like. And that works great unless you're an early journey painter and you're still whining, complaining about and trying to be a perfectionist. I don't like it. So then you cover up everything. Whoa, no. You can't cover up everything. Just cover up the little bits of marks that aren't quite as good. Now, that's not what I'm doing right now. And it is quite important that the paint that's on my brushes right now, of course, is transparent. Again, if you were trying to scratching your head, and if you're watching me a little bit and say, well, what is it that Dan Nelson does that's different from what most of his contemporaries do? And the answer would be transparent. Traditional oil painters in the last 100 years have quite focused on, if not fixated on, opaque paint. And all right, that might be enough. So I'm doing different shades of purple here and there. Let's do a little bit of fall color. So right now this will be sort of a drawing phase stage, but also sort of not. It's sort of just a glazing, coloring phase. I just want to get a little, before I go ahead with, that's too intense. I thought it might be. I want to get some fall color back in. It's part of the beauty of the day, it seems to me. Solomon Islands in October. So it's fall colors, especially out here on the island. Be careful about taking this intense color too close to their faces, because I don't want it to compete, of course. Enough of that. And let's do a similar thing, this time though with blue. I don't know which blue, phthalo or ultramarine. When in doubt, use a little bit of both. And I'll do some drawing again back here on these boats and in the water. At the moment, as you can probably tell, I'm not trying to copy the photograph, the color of the water in the photograph, because it's not a quality photograph. It's just like, sorry, Jim, I don't know. So you probably took the pictures. Well, maybe the photographer did. I don't know. But anyway, it doesn't matter. This part of the photograph back here is not particularly good. So I'm supplying from my understanding of what the world looks like. I'm supplying water, ocean, bay color back there. All right, and that's enough of that. I think, sad to say, I need to end this broadcast much sooner than I would like. And I hope to broadcast again tomorrow. I am indeed going to do some work without your company. I hope that's all right. I'm going to continue to do the measuring, the tedious measuring process on their faces and a little bit on their bodies as well. Make sure I've got their whole figure, physique, more or less. Well, I know it's more or less correct, but pretty correct. I'll double check. All right, so I'll do that without your company. So when I come back, hopefully tomorrow, I'll begin painting that final edit layer, and I'll start at least with their faces. So we'll focus on, at that time, probably painting small portraits. A little bit different from painting larger ones. All right, thank you for your company. Let me see what chats you guys have left here. Sorry I wasn't able to read all my chats on Thursday before I bailed on you. You can cheat on your wife, you can cheat on your diet, you can cheat on a test, you can cheat on an election. But you can't cheat on artwork. That's right. Hello, Tiago. Oh, I'm glad you got here 10 minutes late. You have to pay a fine. Uncle, by the way, thank you for your kind, generous gift the other day. Yes, I spent it. Yesterday was my birthday. Today's Monday. Yeah. I used it for a birthday present for myself. Thank you. And my wife. Do I like working on wood panels? Yes, I do, in fact. It's a lot of work, a lot of preparation. The reason I don't do it much is because then you have the problem of framing, and I hate messing with frames. Something defective in my art DNA. I don't like messing with frames. Foxhole Willie. Sarah's dad says Joe is tall enough. Knock him down a few inches. That's hilarious. Exactly. All right. You did not take the photo. Got it. And it's a fine. Anyway, never mind. I won't get into it. But this is the kind of thing you do with all your photos. We're always, as artists, I think I talked about this on Thursday, on this upward spiral. Observation, accurate copying, seeing, looking very analytically. And then the other side of the spiral, so it's an upward spiral, that's what I'm doing right here in front of me, is painting what we know. And here, I'm painting what I know, not what I see in the photograph. All right, thanks, gang. I know it's a little bit of a short. Of course, on YouTube, all your broadcasts are supposed to be less than 15 minutes. Dang. Thanks for your company. Hope to see y'all tomorrow.